Hello, everyone. Okay, so with 5D, this is going to be covering systems of equations using applications or application problems. So we're going to be using substitution and elimination a lot in these applications. This is just applying what we've already learned in those ideas and those topics. So if you're still struggling with substitution and or elimination, I would actually recommend going back and reviewing those concepts. So I would recommend watching 5C for elimination and 5B for substitution. All right, so looking at these problems here, these are going to be word problems. So think back to unit 1. Whenever I gave you word problems, that means our answers are also going to be word problems, not word problems, statements. There we go. English is really hard. All right, so looking at this first one, I give you a problem and you actually have to write out the equations based on what the problem is saying. So a number is 8 more than 3 times the second number, and the sum of twice the first and 5 times the second is 38. And you want to find those two numbers. So the first step here is you actually want to define the variables. So what I mean by that is, for example, you could say x equals the first number and y equals the second number. So you can actually use different letters for variables. Like if you want to, you could actually use, say, F for your first number and an S for your second number. But there are a few things that I would definitely look out for. So keep in mind, if you want to use an S, make sure you're going to distinguish it between a 5. If you're going to use a T, make sure you distinguish it from a plus sign. So if you are going to use T, I would just curve it at the very end, just so you can make sure it's a T, not a plus sign. Be careful with Q's and 9s. Q's, I would make sure you curve at the end if you are going to use them. But traditionally, I think most people just stick with X's and Y's just out of habit. But it's actually a good idea to use different variables. Just be careful with certain ones as they can look like other symbols. All right, so now that we actually distinguish what our variables are going to be, now we actually want to write the equations. So there's kind of a 5-step method that we're going to use. So we just did step 1, which is define our variable. So that one we just did. So now we want to move on to writing our equations. So that's going to be based on the context of the actual problem. So looking here, a number is, so it doesn't matter whether you say X or Y. But for here, I'm going to say a number, say X, is, which translates to equal. So I'm going to say 8 more than. So anytime you see more, that's going to be an indicator for addition. So 8 more than 3 times a second number. So what that means is I'm going to use the other variable. So 3 times the second number, which means 3y. So my first equation here is going to be x equals 8 plus 3y. So now I need to look at my other equation, because remember, a system is going to involve at least 2 equations. All right, so now the sum of those numbers, so the sum is going to imply addition. So I'm using a different color for my second equation. So the sum of twice the first, so twice the first number, so 2x, and 5 times, so here we say and, which means plus, 5 times the second, 5 times the second, so 5y, is, so equals 38. So my next equation is going to be 2x plus 5y equals 38. So I'm going to write these out. So x equals 8 plus 3y. Now, addition is commutative, so the order here doesn't necessarily matter. However, this typically is actually supposed to be 3y plus 8. Just because of the word than. The word than means we have to switch the order. All right, and then our next equation, which is in blue, so twice the first. So 2x plus 5y equals 38. So now that we have our system here, now this is just a review from substitution and elimination. So based on the setup of your system here is actually going to determine which method you should do. So strictly because we have an x equals equation here, I'm actually going to do substitution. If you want to do elimination, you can. You can rearrange your top equation to standard form, and then you can multiply. So it's really up to you. So I'm going to plug in 3y plus 8, plug it in right here for x. So I'm going to do 2 parentheses, 3y plus 8 plus 5y equals 38. So there's my substitution. So now I'm actually going to distribute and simplify so I can solve. So I'm going to distribute the 2. So I'm going to have 6y plus 16 plus 5y equals 38. So now from here, you want to combine your like terms. So 6y and 5y combine to give you 11y plus 16 equals 38. So the next step here, we're solving for y. So I'm going to subtract 16. So we're going to have 11y equals 22. From here, I need to divide by 11. So I'm going to have y equals 2. So remember, your answers typically are going to be coordinates. So we found the y value, but we still need to find the x value. All right, so I'm actually going to use my x equals equation over there. So I'm going to use x equals 3y plus 8. So I'm going to sub in for that y value that I just found. So I'm going to have 3 times 2 plus 8. So 3 times 2, which gives you 6, plus 8, which means you're going to get an x value of 14. So because these are applications, your final answer is actually not just going to be a coordinate. So if you just write 14 comma 2 and circle the coordinate, it's actually not right. You have to be very specific in the way you answer it. So this is where you have to go back and reference your variables up here. So we say the first number is your x value, and then the second number is your y value. So I'm going to say the first number is 14, and the second number is 2. So it just has to be a sentence. Okay. So be careful with the order of your answer here. So if you're saying the first number is 2 and the second number is 14, based on the setup, it could be wrong. So you also have to be very specific with what number goes to what value. All right, now looking at the second one here. So a theater sold 900 tickets to a play. Floor seats cost $12 each and balcony seats cost $10 each. The total receipts were $9,780. How many of each type of ticket were sold? All right, so we're looking for 2 equations. So first off, we need to identify what our 2 variables are going to be. So they sold floor seats and they sold balcony seats. So those are going to be our 2 different variables. So for this one, I'm going to say F is floor seats and B is balcony seats. All right. Now keep in mind, looking at your first sentence here, they said that they sold 900 tickets total. So between those 2 different types of tickets, F plus B is 900. So they sold 900 tickets total, but now we want to look at the price. So if floor seats cost $12 each and balcony seats cost $10 each, so floor seats were 12. So 12F plus 10B, this is going to be their profit equation, which means they are going to make a total of 9,780. All right, so once again, here's your two equations. You have the option to do substitution or elimination. It does not matter. But because I have coefficients here in my top equation of 1, I think substitution is going to be easier. But if you want to do elimination, you can multiply one of your equations, your top equation by whatever. All right, so I'm going to take this equation. And I'm going to solve it for one of my variables. Doesn't matter if you solve for F or B. I'm just going to solve for, I don't know, we'll solve for B. So I'm going to get rid of F. So I'm going to have B equals 900 minus F. If you do negative F plus 900, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter. All right, so now I'm going to do my substitution. So I have 900 minus F right here for my B value. I'm going to go plug that in over here for my B value in my other equation. So my equation here, I'll have 12F plus 10 parentheses, 900 minus F, equals 9,780. So looking at this equation down here, this is what I want to start solving. So I'm going to start by distributing. So I'm going to have 12F plus 10 times 900, which gives you 9,000. Then minus 10F equals 9,780. So now I'm going to combine my like terms. So 12F minus 10F. So that's going to leave me with 2F plus 9,000 equals 9,780. So now I need to subtract 9,000 on both sides. All right, so I'm going to have 2F equals 780. Now I want to divide that by 2 so I can get F by itself. So I'm going to have F equals 360. So now that I've solved for F, which is the number of floor seats, now I can solve for B. So it doesn't matter which equation you plug in to solve for B. Just to kind of give you a rundown of the different options, you can plug it into this top equation over here, the bottom equation, or you can plug it into this modified equation here. So because it's already solved for B, I'm just going to use that equation. So I'm going to have B equals 900 minus F. So I'm going to have B equals 900 minus 360, which means my B value is going to be 540. So from here, what that means I'm going to do is now I need to write my statement, which is my answer. So this is why I like using the first letter of each of those variables, because I know exactly which one corresponds to what. I don't have to guess, does X correspond to the floor or does X correspond to the basement? Not basement, balcony, everything's fine. So 540 balcony seats and 300 floor seats. Were sold. So it doesn't have to be my sentence exactly. You can come up with your own variation. As long as it's conveying the same information, then it's good. So if you want to say they sold 360 floor seats and 540 balcony seats, same idea. As long as it's conveying the same information, you are good to go. All right, so as you can see, these are really just applying substitution and hopefully eventually elimination. So number 3. All right, so Brittany has 18 coins, all dimes and nickels. So the coins are worth a total of $1.50. So how many dimes and how many nickels does he have? She have? Everything's fine. All right, so looking here, they tell us that the coins that Brittany has is all dimes and nickels. So think of the value of a dime and a nickel. So this is 10 cents and this is 5 cents. So dimes are 10 cents, nickels are 5 cents. So the coins are worth a total of $1.50. So that's going to be your value equation. But they have 18 coins in total. So first off, I know we're talking about dimes and nickels, or nickels and dimes, whichever. So I'm going to say N is my nickels. And I'm going to say D is my dimes. All right. So there are 18 coins total. So what that means is I'm going to have N plus D equals 18, because I know there's 18 coins total. So between nickels and dimes, there has to be 18. So that's my quantity equation. Now I want to do my actual value equation. So what that means is now if I have 5 cents per nickel and 10 cents per dime, I know that in total will be $1.50. All right, so what I'm going to do based on the setup here, I'm going to go ahead and do substitution again. If you want to do elimination, go for it. All right, so N plus D equals 18. All right, so I'm going to solve for dimes. So I'm going to subtract N. So I'm going to have dimes equals 18 minus N, which is my nickels. All right, I'm going to take 18 minus N here, and I'm going to sub it in for my D value right here in my other equation. So my equation, so I'm going to have 0.05 N plus 0.10 times 18 minus N equals 150. So the 18 minus N here, that's what's being substituted in. So just like before, now we're going to distribute. So I'm going to have 0.05 N plus 1.8 minus 0.10 N equals 1.5 or 150. Okay, so I'm going to combine like terms. So to combine, I'm going to do 0.05 N and negative 0.10. So be careful here because I see people get this part wrong all the time. It's negative 0.05 N plus 1.8 equals 1.50. All right, and now I'm going to subtract 1.8 or 180. If that helps. All right, so I'm going to have negative 0.05 N equals negative 30 cents. Now I want to divide by negative 0.05. So when you divide, you're going to get 6. So we have 6 nickels. So same as before, now I want to solve for the number of dimes. So I'm actually going to use this equation up here since it's already solved for dimes. So I'm going to have D equals 18 minus N. So dimes equals 18 minus 6, which means I'm going to have 12 dimes. All right, so now I need to write my statement. All right, so Brittany has 12 dimes and 6 nickels. Boom. So whenever you're writing your statement, your answer, it doesn't have to be like a full-on paragraph. It's just literally a sentence that covers what you need. All right. Next. So a rectangle has a perimeter of 18 centimeters. The length is 5 centimeters greater than its width. You want to find the area of the rectangle. All right, so what I see happen most on these problems is students will only find the dimensions of the rectangle and they forget to find the area. So this one is actually finding the dimensions and then taking it a step further and finding an actual value. All right, so first off, we're looking at the length and width. So those are going to be our variables. So I'm going to use a cursive L for my length. Or if you want to use a capital L, that works as well. And I'll use W for my width. All right, so they said our perimeter is 18. So if you remember the perimeter formula, that means 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. And they're saying it's going to be equal to 18. So that's going to be our first equation here. And then they're saying over here, the length. So the length is 5 greater than the width. So that means 5 greater than the width. So 5 plus W, or W plus 5. So those are going to be our 2 equations here. All right, so 2 times the length plus 2 times the width is 18. And the length is the width plus 5. So this is our system that we want to solve. So it's already set up for substitution. I think all of these might be substitution. Everything's fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my W plus 5, and I'm going to sub it in for L. So I'm going to have 2 parentheses, W plus 5. Hello, there we go. Plus 2W equals 18. Now I'm going to distribute. So 2W plus 10 plus 2W equals 18. So I'm going to combine my like terms, 2W, 2W. So 4W plus 10 equals 18. Now I'm going to subtract 10. So 4W is equal to 8. And then you can divide by 4. So we're going to get a width value of 2. So now I also want to find the length. So the length, I'm going to use my length equation, which is W plus 5. So we just said the width is 2. So the length is 2 plus 5, which means my length here is going to be 7. Now keep in mind, remember, we don't want just the dimensions of the rectangle. We actually want to know what's the area of this rectangle. So the formula for the area of a rectangle is going to be the length times the width. So the area is going to be 7 times 2. So our area here is going to be 14 square centimeters. Okay, but I have to write it as a statement. It doesn't have to be a long statement, if anything. All right, so you can literally just say the area boom. So my advice to you is really double and triple check to make sure you're addressing all parts of the question. Because if you stop and say, well, the length is 7 and the width is 2, you're not answering all the questions. All right, and last but not least, so two angles are complementary, meaning both angles add up to a sum of 90 degrees. So the measure of one angle is twice the measure of the other angle. What's the measure of each angle? So you're actually going to learn this exact concept when you get to geometry. So complementary, as mentioned, means they add up to a sum of 90 degrees. So I am looking at the measure of two different angles. So you can be creative here with what your variables are. So angle 1 and angle 2. All right, so I'm just kidding. I won't do that. I'm gonna confuse myself if I do that. X and Y. So we're looking at the different angle measures. So let's see, two angles are complementary. So my first equation here is going to be x plus y equals 90. All right. Now the measure of one angle is twice the measure of the other. So what this implies, twice the measure of the other. So this means it's going to be x equals 2y. Doesn't matter which one's larger. So my system here, so x plus y equals 90, and I'm going to have x equals 2y. So this is already set up for you to do substitution, so there was not any elimination on this one. So for your problem here, I'm saying x is equal to 2y, so that's what I'm going to substitute. So I'm going to have 2y plus y equals 90. So I'm going to combine that term, so 3y is equal to 90. Then divide both sides by 3. So y is going to equal 30. So now I'm going to use this equation, x equals 2y, and I'm going to use my y value to sub it in. So x equals 2 times 30, which means x is equal to 60. So our two angle measures that we have are 60 and 30. So the first angle measure, or I'll say the first angle is 60 degrees, and the second is 30 degrees. That's terrible. Still terrible, but you know what? Close enough.